Hi all. Today I will show you a very interesting chess trap, and so we play as white. The first move we make with the king's pawn on e4, your opponent puts his pawn on b6 with the idea of bringing the bishop to b7. What we do next is we put the queen's pawn on d4 and your opponent puts the bishop on b7. The black bishop attacks our e4 pawn. It needs to be defended somehow. We defend it with the bishop and place the bishop on d3. That is, the bishop defends our pawn on e4, but we left our weak pawn on g2 unprotected. And your opponent immediately sees this and he immediately wants to take it with his bishop in order to take the rook further, since the rook will be trapped here. Therefore your opponent's task is to immediately remove this e4 pawn to open this diagonal. And how he can do it? He can do it with only one move, and he will definitely do it. He will put a pawn on f5. That is, he simply gives us a pawn. We seem to take the black pawn and we all fell into his trap, as it were. He captures the pawn on g2 with his bishop. The bishop attacks the rook and we cannot divert the rook in any way. That is, it is not the best beginning of the games for us. We lose the rook, as it were, guaranteed. Your opponent is sure that we fell into his trap, but in fact the opposite is true. He was trapped and not us. After this move, the rook respectively, we cannot defend what we are doing. We transfer the queen to h5 and declare check to the black king. The only possible entry to defend against the check is only your opponent will put a pawn on g6. What do we do next? We take the pawn on g6 with a pawn. Now what options does your opponent have? But he lost anyway. If he simply takes a pawn with a pawn, you will take a check with the queen, and checkmate is the first such variation he can do. If he still takes, let's say, the rook, then you simply take the pawn on h7 with a pawn check and checkmate. That is the most optimal option that he can do to remove this threat. Most often it happens. What he does, he brings the knight to f6. The knight attacks the queen. Now we need to take the queen away, as it were. But if we move the queen from this diagonal, all danger will disappear. We do not retract the queen, but you simply take a pawn with a pawn and the queen declares check. But your opponent is happy to take our queen and thinks that he has escaped this danger and won the queen. Well, then we just become a bishop on g6 check and checkmate. That is, in any case with all these options you are betting a guaranteed checkmate. So you can very easily catch your greedy opponent so that he wants to take this pawn on g2 and catch our rook. And then you can checkmate very easily. This trap is very short and simple. It is perfect for opening and you can easily apply it to me. Very easy to learn, easy to remember. It is very clear and everything is very logical here. Since your opponent really wants to remove this pawn, he immediately sees this diagonal repeat, as everything is here and a pawn is captured and a rook is caught. Many opponents do not take into account the retaliatory danger, but here there is already a mat danger and you are already guaranteed to put a checkmate. Be sure to study it and apply it in your parties. If you like the subscription and like with me other videos. Play chess and remember, every chess master was once a beginner.